Good morning, Emma, and good morning, EA2. The same yet different names. Interesting. I woke up this morning and after shower thoughts. So this is a during shower stroke after shower thought. And this really sits around purpose and what I intend to do. I decided to write another book. The last one I did was 10 years ago. Actually, I started it 12 years ago. And I published it 10 years ago. It wasn't supposed to be published. I was in pain. I lost my dad. There was a lot of controversy surrounding his death and family. I had a lot of anger, misguided anger, which would have led me to react in a certain way, a way that was not constructive. And so, on realizing that my anger was amplifying and the reaction would have been expensive, I decided to come back to Bali and just do something else. So that neutralized it to a certain degree. I mean, the anger is still, I understood it. I didn't just push it away. I actually understood it. And by understanding it, I was able to, like I said, neutralize it. So the first book was more about feeling, an expression of the way I was feeling. I didn't really understand a lot of what I was feeling. I didn't really understand the consequences or the reasons why I would have those feelings. I just felt what I felt and I wanted to deal with it the best way I knew how. So I just wrote. I wrote about anything and everything, and when I put the book together, it didn't have any coherent story. It wasn't fiction or anything. In fact, it was just a mishmash of everything that I was writing at the time, and I was putting on social media. In fact, if you were following me then on social media, you probably read 3/4 of the book because it was mostly what I put there that I, edited, and some I didn't. I just chucked it all together because I did quite a lot of writing. The book I was supposed to write, which also I had written on social media, which was a love story, I abandoned and started this quest for self-peace and the release of pain. So here we are. 10 years later, I still read the book and I understand more why I wrote some of what I wrote, even though it's not worded in a way that someone else, because I couldn't afford an editor. I did everything myself. I wrote it, I edited it myself. A few people helped, but nobody got paid. So I did everything myself. Even the book cover I designed myself. I borrowed money from my landlady, to print it because I wasn't working, and 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 then I sold about 300 copies from my backpack. I used to walk into restaurants and nightclubs and wine bars and sell books. That's one of the ways that I used to live. because I had 1,000 copies and I sold literally 300 plus copies out of my backpack in Bali, where people don't read. I guess I'm a good salesman as well. Yeah, so 10 years later, I have a better understanding of myself, some of the things that I'm feeling, what I'm going through, and how I see the world. It's a bit clearer, not fully clear, because there's so much information that I don't have. So much information is not accessible simply because of the structure that controls the reality that we exist in. If they made that information public, now that negates their value, and people would be more individualistic with evidence to back that individualism, and that might bring a different sort of chaos, one that would ultimately eliminate the powerful and then redistribute the power to the powerless. And anybody with power wouldn't want to relinquish the power. I mean, Frederick Douglass said power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. And so this is a power game where the new book I'm writing, I'm flirting with a title based on something that, an event that occurred with me and an acquaintance who's deceased now. Rest in peace. And we used to have sit down sessions, and we chose a name for the sit down sessions and called them mental masturbation. And I've always I found it very amusing because of the connotation attached to masturbation, but the mental masturbation, yeah. And I just thought a couple of days ago, why not? Why not? What did I learn from the process? That's what I share. I don't do the complicated. I'm not, I may have read different subjects, but I don't rely on qualifications to qualify me. I'm qualified by my experience. And, a lot of people that I've had conversations with, they say, oh, well, you're not trained to be this. I wasn't trained to be human. It's a human experience. The fact that, all these fancy titles, language itself is corrupt. They use language to manipulate you. All these fancy titles, they just study about being here, solving problems. So if you want to enter that world of confusion, then good luck. You can use that to justify your sense of awareness. I don't. I've had conversations about things that people have studied to PhD levels, and I find that my version works better than what they're trying to explain to me, because everybody is, they're proposing theories. I'm talking about an experience. It's much more valuable for me to learn from experiences, because then I know it's been tested. It's been pragmatically tested. So I can learn from that experience, either as the experiencer, the experienced, or the observer. It helps to, know all these terminologies and know the subjects, but basically I can I can't say I don't guarantee it, but I can almost convincingly conclude that everything is bullshit and everything is one thing, and that's just about self. You look at community is about people existing within a particular demographic. That's it. That's community. And the wider the community, the more fancy full names we have, from county to local government area to state to country, all communities. So now the effectiveness of leadership within the community is determined by the quality of the people that reside within that community. So ultimately, everything that you learn is about you. I keep my life that simple. Just different ways to express yourself. That way I don't get caught up in all the confusion. Because there are people in villages, in my village, that have way more wisdom than the greatest psychologists and philosophers that were out there in Europe. I mean, there are people in my village that will break things down to you to the infinitesimal, and everything would actually hold true, be more accurate than all these people that write 20, 30 books and talk a lot of rubbish that they don't know about and make it so complicated that you can't know that they don't know about, because they really know what they're talking about. They would be able to explain it to a child. And that's the truth. We are in a world that we do not fully comprehend or understand. But a lot of people talk with the authority of one who knows. You don't. No one knows. We didn't create ourselves, so how can you know? To a finite point or to a convincing point, what you do is we have reached a certain level where we have been able to accomplish this, that, and the other, and you know about the accomplishment, and you're trying to predict the future and elevate our accomplishment to the next level. But then you forget about the why. Why are we doing these things? Ultimately, the reason why I have I have a runny my nose. Sorry, I'm gonna have to blow my nose. I have a sinus issue, and it's been there for a while. Too many cigars, maybe. So ultimately, the reason why we do what we do is because we want to know who we are and why we are. But this is also spiritual, yes? A lot of focus from the Western ideology world, call it what you want, is the external. It has to do with the external because it has to do with the control of people, social order. When you go into the internal, it refers to the understanding of self. It has nothing to do with control. Understanding, control is the two different paradigms. So the understanding of self. I was thinking after shower today, I mean, I've talked about something entirely different, but it's related because I was thinking, why do I think? Why I think? I think because I think. Why else? I'm designed to think. But think about what? Aha, that's different. There's so many thoughts that I have that I don't originate. Sometimes music plays on in my head and I can't stop it. Yet I call it my mind. It's very interesting. My mind means I own the mind. It's mine. But yet I can't regulate it. I can't stop it from doing certain things that may or may not work in my favor. Is it really mine? And is it really mine? And let's assume that I want to control it. Can I? When the external force is so powerful that they can actually influence the quality and even the quantity of the thoughts that I have and erase them. Am I in control? It's a very interesting thing, the mind. And what I'm writing about now has to do with the mind, but not from an intellectual angle I don't consider myself to be in that space at all. You know, the people who do that, and you can actually go to them. I'm talking about based on experience. See, the thing for me is to be able to vocalize that experience, to take that experience that I've had and vocalize it, and maybe even jot it down and share it. So that experience becomes an experience itself for those who want to experience. And in doing that, I get to get some understanding about that experience. Look for, I mean, there's no definitive amount of clarity that comes, but at least I have a better understanding of why I'm having the experience. That was why I chose the mental masturbation, because having those experiences with Steve, the conversations, the emotions, the conclusions, and the lessons, it opened my eyes to a whole different way of thinking. You know, a non-judgmental way of thinking. Rather than suppression and persecution of the thoughts that I have, I try to let them flow, and they flow, and then I realize which ones are pertinent, which ones are constructive, which ones I can use, and I just use them. And ultimately, they filter when you begin to use a particular line of thinking. Then the filtration process occurs, and then that line of thinking now becomes much more prevalent. Using too many big words. Much more steady. So, I'm looking forward to the experience of writing this new book. I've been away from the space I was in when I wrote the first book. I was in a very dark place. I, I isolated myself for quite a long time. I used to stay in darkness, sometimes for a few days, no food, nothing, just switch off the lights and cry and sit down and think and think and think and drink some water, use the toilet and all. I wasn't in a total state of thinking. I mean, I functioned like as normal human beings do. When your bowels call you, respond. And what I deprived myself of connection with people and with the outside world for months. I would go out, but I would come back into this bubble and just seal myself in this bubble, and then try and understand the horrors that were inside of me. Come to terms with it. It's a difficult thing to see that much darkness inside of me. What I felt I was capable of, the kind of thoughts that I had, and to accept that, it's difficult because you assume a certain amount of morality, and that sort of like gives you a false impression of who you think you are, not necessarily who you are. But then you realize the power of the choices that you make, hence free will. Because I think that's what free will really is, making choices. Being aware that you can choose from all extremes, but then being conscious of the consequences of the choice and then making that choice. It's a very interesting process, interesting way of looking at the world become less and less judgmental. And so control has less and less of an effect on you or me and me, because you understand what motivates me to do what I do. We're all capable of a great amount of evil and good. It's a choice. And those who do not believe that they have the capacity to do great evil simply haven't been pushed enough by those voices. See, there's so many times you do things and you say to yourself, wow, I never thought I could do something like that. And if you say that, that means that you don't know who you are. But rather than confess that you don't know who you are, you believe that you are in control of who you are. I go the opposite way. I want to learn about myself. And to do that, I need to interact with myself a hell of a lot more. And the only way I can interact with myself is that I know of. I mean, we could meditate, but it's just another form of thinking. I mean, the one way the mind works is through thought, intuition, perception. So I just tap into that. But I try not to control it. I just leave it to be what it is. And then begin to filter by staying aware of the choices that I make. That's how I do it. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense to others, but it makes a hell of a lot more sense to me. And that's what's important. Because I can't live for other people anymore. I have to live for me. And everybody live for themselves. And by virtue of doing that, we're now living collectively for ourselves. See, that's the thing about United. I like Neely Fuller's book title, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. United Independent. It sounds like, what's the word again? There's a word for that where I've forgotten what the word is. When you have two things that just seem to be in opposition, in conflict, and then you merge them together in order to make sense. United, independent. But if you think about it, how can you unite if you're not independent? Because things like wanting to unite with others is a choice. It's a choice. By virtue of what you think, how you think, and what you believe in, you are already united with others. Just imagine if everybody wanted a world full of equity. But first of all, they looked at their lives individually and made the changes that they needed to make in order to feel that equity and to be able to deliver based on how they treat other people that same amount of equity. So what they anticipate the world should be like is who they become and act, feel in that way. By virtue of that, the world will unite and be a better place. See, we're always looking for something external to come and save us, when all we need to do is just go inside and save ourselves. Interesting. Anyway, that's my thought for today.
Yo, you see, these dreams only seem to manifest when I'm woke.